Throughout my childhood, I was a staunch Nintendo man. When the other kids at school talked about the Mega Drives and Sonic the Hedgehog, it was Mario and Super Metroid that I countered with, and I truly believe nothing would ever displace Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past as my favourite game. That Zelda game on the SNES was the pinnacle to the young me, a game with the richest story and the most vibrant world I had ever experienced. As the years went on, my horizons broadened, and my mother bought me and my brother a Sony PlayStation, while the long wait to the Nintendo 64 dragged on. I liked my PlayStation, but I didn't love it, not the way I did my Nintendo consoles. Other companies just couldn't create video games that connected with me in the same way. When the kids at school started talking about Final Fantasy VII, the 3-disc monolith that was touted as the greatest game of all time, it irritated me. Whenever something receives a lot of hype, I get turned off from it. My natural instinct when told something is one thing is to question it, and when it is impressed upon me so hard that something is the greatest, my initial reaction is to rebel against that proclamation. As the months passed, as the hype died down and as people moved on to newer, shinier games, Final Fantasy VII reduced in price, and the time was right for me to give it a go. With only my pocket money to buy games with, I looked for the ones that I would get the most value from, and a 3-disc 200-hour game in my preferred genre of the role-playing game fit the bill. With nobody still telling me that I would love it more than any other game, my argumentative desire to push back at the consensus had abated, and it was time to see what this game was all about. Just how good could a game that involved taking turns to hit each other really be? The answer, as it turned out, was that a turn-based game really could be phenomenal. The initial part of the game, involving the downtrodden rebels fighting against a corporation that stole vital resources from the planet to make their own life more comfortable at the expense of the slum-dwelling poor, served not only to get my young rebel heart immediately on side, but also shaped the political beliefs that I hold to this day. It was an awakening into the reality of the world that I wasn't prepared for, and one that made a seismic impact upon me. As the world opened out and became this vast, sprawling landscape, full of identity, stories, wild characters and gut-wrenching tragedy, it slowly dawned on me that A Link to the Past had become my second favourite game. School had always been a chore, and now my days were spent frustrated with reality, my distracted thoughts occupied with getting home and returning to the fantasy world this game created. I think a large part of that was due to the death of my father drowning me in emotions that I didn't know how to handle. Death was never final in video games. You always had one more life. You always had a power-up that would save you. Final Fantasy VII went a step further, with magic spells able to resurrect any of your party who fell on the field. In this game, you could save anyone's life by an incantation or a potion, and even if you didn't, they'd be restored post-battle. Then it happened. There was a death that offered no resurrection, an ending that gave no hope of salvation. The character's life was over. They weren't coming back. And yet, the game went on. It showed how the characters dealt with the aftermath, how they processed their emotions, and how it fueled their motivations. I remember little of the original game beyond that point. I only remember that it went on, much as my life had to without my father in the world. During one of the most difficult periods in my life, Final Fantasy VII offered not just a temporary escape from my reality, but hope that one day I would be able to deal with the pain and confusion that plagued it. I only played Final Fantasy VII once, and I can't remember if I ever finished it. To me, it doesn't matter. That game, what it meant to me and the way it shaped me, left such a lasting impression that, over time, I didn't want to revisit it. Perhaps it was the memories associated with my life at the time of playing it. Perhaps it was fear of the esteem that I held it in being diminished by a second playthrough. I don't know. It just felt like more than a game. It was an experience. It was a moment in time, one to be cherished and treasured for what it was, what it meant, and what it represented to me in my life. It was a masterpiece. As the years went by and the rumours grew of a remake, one enhanced by the remarkable advances in technology and what video games could be, I was filled with excited trepidation. I knew I had to play it if it ever came to fruition, but the fears of those memories being tarnished grew with every great game that I played. How well would the story hold up? How invested in the characters would I get? How would the adult me, with all my years of experience, development, maturation, heartbreak and joy, react when returning to that world? The biggest question of all was the simplest. Could the remake possibly live up to the idealised image that had formed in my memories? When the game was released, I held off from buying it, wary of falling into the same hype trap that deterred me for so long so many years ago. Somewhat fittingly, I received it as a Christmas present from my mother. It sat on my shelf for several months, untouched, unopened, just there, waiting for me. I had to wait. I had to make sure I had finished my university studies for the year, because I knew I would get lost in this game. Maybe, subconsciously, I wasn't ready. As I submitted my final assignment, I loaded the game onto my PlayStation and let it install before going to bed. I needed to sleep before pressing play. I needed to be prepared before my return to Midgar. I needed to be ready to relive my childhood. The next day I got up early, my sleep not as restful as I hoped. I had too much nervous energy, whether it was from finishing my assignment or for what was to come, I cannot say. I made myself a coffee, then turned on the computer and loaded the game up. As the beautiful title music filtered through the speakers, the emotions started rising and I sat there just listening while I drank my brew. I wanted to take it all in, because this was over 20 years in the making. I replenished my mug and then, with a deep breath, I pressed X to begin the game. As the game began, the graphics blew me away. What were once misshapen sprites with circles for hands were now realistic humans. Midgar was showcased in a way that once could only have been visualised in my head. Barrett burst onto the scene looking like a cross between Blade and Dave Bautista, a monster of a man with a huge gun for a hand. Then came Cloud, his piercing eyes sending shivers down my spine. This is what Final Fantasy VII was destined to look like, and it looked incredible. As the opening sequence ended, the game was on. One big change was to the action style. No longer the turn-based affair I had once derided before actually playing the original, the remake is a live action fight, like the Zelda games I grew up loving. The swoosh of Cloud's sword felt so weighty in my hands. Defense felt so natural right from the start, while the way special abilities were utilised felt so intuitive. For a game with so much emotion involved, it feeling so powerful was both reassuring and crucial. I was desperate to take charge of Barrett, my favourite character to control in the original, but I was forced to wait as the anticipation built. There was a flashback to Tifa, which brought with it another wave of nostalgia, taking me back to being a teenager again and being reacquainted with old friends. I was blown away by the opening phase of the game, and I took a breather while watching the video sequence. The reverie was broken by Barrett finally firing his gun, taking out a robotised machine gun and threatening Cloud before he joined the party. Here we go. The gun felt good to fire, but it was his special move, the overdrive, that really brought the boom. As we took on the sweeper, the first challenging opponent of the game, the switching of control between Cloud and Barrett felt so natural, so easy, while the use of different abilities and magic enhanced the gameplay. We approached the reactor we were to explode and my heart started pounding. If I'd remembered correctly, this is where we would meet the first boss character. Under Barrett's demand, I placed the bomb and set the timer for 20 minutes. I could have gone with 30 minutes, but it felt right to go 20. Oh Christ, it's giant robot Scorpion. I should have gone with 30. And what a fight it was. The Scorpion Sentinel is a great opening boss, cycling through different stages and demanding you use the full range of abilities and skills available in order to defeat it. At times you felt like you should be overwhelmed by the intensity of the action, the switching between characters at key points and the impact of the sounds, graphics and explosions going on, but you always seem to figure out just in time how to do what needs to be done. It really is a fantastic tutorial boss, one that ensures you are fully ready for the adventure ahead. Now the timer has begun, 20 minutes to evacuate. As we fled back through the reactor, I was flooded with nostalgic feelings of the ending of another of my favourite childhood games, Super Metroid. The remake has its hooks in me, and the real world has faded from my memory. All that matters is Midgar. As some clearly evil mustachioed corporate wanker pressed a button and set off the self-destruct system of the Mako generator, the need to escape intensified amid explosions and falling debris. We came across another sweeper, but with the sharpened skills from the Scorpion fight, it's dispatched within seconds. We escaped the reactor well shy of the 20 minutes, and as Mako reigned over the city, the introduction chapter was complete. This experience was amazing. I'd been playing for an hour, and I was already devastated that the game will end far too soon, and the wait for the second part would begin. As the team realised the consequences of the explosion that was caused by the mustachioed man, but for which they believed they were to blame, Barrett showed his leadership with a mighty speech while epic music played. Making your way through a city falling apart filled with terrified people, it was impossible not to feel guilt at your part in blowing up the reactor. But those thoughts get interrupted as Cloud is struck by a vision. It's Sephiroth, and now he's right here in front of me. Is it him? Is it just a hallucination? Staggering through the wreckage of a world ablaze in pursuit of Sephiroth, you felt Cloud grow weaker, unable to keep pace until the villain, revealed as previously slain by Cloud, gave us a speech and urged us to run. Run, Cloud. Run away. You have to live. As we swung our sword at him, the apparition evaporated with one final instruction. Hold on to your hatred. We returned to reality to be greeted by Aerith. She's just known as the flower seller at this point, but it was Aerith. Sephiroth appeared at her shoulder, taunting us that we were too weak to save anyone, even ourselves. Cloud collapsed, but Aerith helped him up and offered him a beautiful flower as her epic theme began playing in the background. This game is so special. All these moments, all these reunions with these characters that once meant so much to me, they affect me in a way that is rare in video games. The next reunion was when we got to the 7th Heaven bar and we were greeted by Tifa sitting on the steps with Barrett's daughter. It took about 30 seconds before Barrett is threatening Cloud again. The friction between the two was magnificent. Tifa asked Cloud to talk outside, and the tension between the two was palpable as she led him to the apartment she had got sorted for him, then followed him in. You can tell there's a rich history between Cloud and Tifa, a deep story that is only hinted at. Cloud was struck by another vision of Sephiroth, hallucinating another person as his nemesis, and only being stopped from killing that innocent person by Tifa. After a good night's sleep, Tifa took Cloud on a tour of the area, which serves as an introduction to other aspects of the game, shops, rest spots and weapon modification, before officially joining the party. The gang is reuniting and it feels so good. After slaying a few low-level beasts and developing a reputation, side quests become unlocked and new weapons become available. One side quest that involved saving a lad with a big mouth revealed aspects of both of their personalities, with Cloud ready to kill him to keep him quiet and Tifa urging and securing compassion for him. Tifa then got sad about the changes in Cloud, hinting the coldness of his personality developed after becoming a soldier. Cloud put it down to the Mako, and then off we went back to the side quests, and, when I was ready, the story proper. In many ways, the remake is like a cross between the original Final Fantasy VII and Yakuza, a constrained world with flexibility within those constraints, a live-action, high-octane fighting style, and all the traditional RPG level-up elements. This game, though, is another level to the Yakuza games. This game is another level to pretty much every game in existence. It's like Final Fantasy VII was a storyboard, and this remake is the final Hollywood blockbuster, with the technology now available to bring an incredible original vision to life, which it does in spectacular fashion. When we were able to use the summon attacks for the first time, it was a complete overload of senses as the screen exploded with some unbelievable attacks. When we fought a haunted house, it was an epic battle that most games wouldn't even conceive as possible, never mind actualise it in such a stunning fashion. The explosions were immense, reverberating through me in a way the original game didn't have the power to provide. The atmosphere of the game was enthralling throughout, from the brash vibrancy of the wall market to the haunting etherealness of the train graveyard, with a beautiful orchestral soundtrack keeping my emotions on a string throughout. Yet, all these technical advances, atmospheres and oral achievements would have meant nothing without the thing that made the original so special, and gave it the ability to rise above the limitations of the time and wedge its place in our hearts forever. The key to Final Fantasy VII was always the relationships between the characters and how they develop as the story progressed. From Barrett and Cloud's competitive dismissal of each other's merits giving way to mutual respect, to the hints of jealousy between Aerith and Tifa that transform into a beautiful friendship. From the way Cloud's barriers are broken down by the people he only originally agreed to help for money, no more so than by Aerith, who breaches his defences with simple things like flower picking, playfulness, introducing him to the children's gang and just talking to him, to the way your own relationships with the characters put you through the ringer in the final stages. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is a masterclass of emotion rarely seen in a video game, one that demonstrates just why memories of the original have endured for so long, why so many people took the game to their hearts, and why the remake was campaigned for and anticipated for 2 decades. It took me just under 45 hours to complete the game. I finished it reluctantly, not wanting it to be over, but unable to stop myself playing the outstanding closing sequence. From the epic boss fight in the Shinra headquarters to the driving section that takes you to the 2-phase final fight, the closing chapters are tinged with heartbreak that the story was coming to an end, but a resolve to complete it to enact justice for those who deserved it. As the game draws to a close and you revisit the slums of Midgar, the slum world is being rebuilt underneath the now exposed sky, and the residents feel the rain on their faces for the first time as the Mako returns itself to the earth. You realise theirs aren't the only cheeks with water running down them. It's such a wonderful, emotional, beautiful ending, and yet, with the second chapter in development, we know it's only the beginning. When that second chapter finally emerges, it will be worth the wait. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is everything I hoped it would be and so much more. It's a masterpiece. I hope you play it, and I hope it brings you the same joy it has me.